Welcome to Your Voice to the World. I'm Eddie Pinero, speaker, filmmaker, and storyteller, teaming up with Terrence McMahon, retired CEO and best-selling author. Having built multi-million-dollar businesses and created lifestyle brands enjoyed by millions around the world, we've established a blueprint to do more and become more. Now we're joining forces to inspire you to share your voice and build the business and lifestyle you've always dreamed of. Welcome to Your Voice to the World. I'm Eddie Pinero.
I'm Terrence McMahon.
And we teach you to share your voice.
And build your business.
What do we got for him today, brother?
Oh, man. A little outside the 9 dots. You ever know what the 9 dots exercise is?
No, what's that?
The
square?
Yeah, you got to go outside the dots to make the puzzle work.
It's a throwback.
The Martian. All right, The Martian by Andy Weir. So we're going sci-fi to talk about connecting dots from thinking outside the 9 dots to sci-fi to business. How can you use this book to share your voice and build your business?
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it is a little bit different, right? This is it's a fiction. A lot of you probably seen the story. They made a movie about it, The Martian. I rated it as one of my top 5 books for entrepreneurs, and there's a reason for that. And we'll get into that. We'll talk about our favorite themes. But long story short, you have an American astronaut who goes to Mars with a crew. And by the way, there are spoilers in here for those that haven't read it and want to. That's kind of assumed. We'll dig into some of the detail. And basically, he gets left behind on Mars. And so you have a botanist, a genius guy who, for over a year is trying to figure out how to not only survive, but make his way across a planet to get picked up. And the entire book is about risk-taking, and it's about finding a way to survive. And the parallels to entrepreneurship, where it's problem, solution, is just, it's a great thing to instill in your mind.
Yeah, I'll give you full credit for suggesting this book, because I saw the movie and I didn't know where you were coming from, honestly. Yeah. But the book is much longer, and it's a much more detailed journey of how this astronaut, who's basically stranded with no chance of survival, creates his own future by figuring things out.
Left for dead, yeah.
Yeah, totally gone. And how he uses elements that are helpful in business, like teamwork and resourcefulness and planning and calculations and simulations. And you'll see how you can use this particular book to take yourself from where you are now to creating something almost out of nothing. Yeah, and that's what I love, from going from something that's almost nothing to something that's significant and relevant. And then he the momentum he creates by these little wins falls in line with so many of the different books we already looked at.
Yeah, so many times. So let's start with that then. Let's start with resourcefulness and how he survives by taking the things that are around him, like limited resources, machinery, technology, and almost repurposing that to stay alive, to sort of recreate his surroundings. And my mind went to, obviously it's less extreme than me being an astronaut on Mars fighting for my survival, but my mind went back to starting a business even before I was making any money. The idea of being a creator, being a storyteller, being a speaker, and learning all these things, like learning how to use Final Cut, learning how to use a mirrorless and DSLR camera, learning how to edit audio, learning how to do all these things, color grade, all this crazy stuff, and repurposing things and making stuff work, which every entrepreneur, every creative, anyone starting out to do anything, like, things don't line up for you right away, Right. It's like you got to manufacture that momentum, like you said.
Yeah. Reminds me of the famous quote by Mike Tyson, because everything in NASA to this day is planned out to the T. And there's a famous interview where Mike Tyson was asked by, I think it was Buster Mathis. He says he had a plan, and Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until I punch you in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
And they had a plan to go to Mars to set up all this research, and they put together basically a dream team. There's thousands and thousands of astronauts put in for a selection to be chosen for what was a team of 6. and they're multi-disciplined people, but they put together and they built a plan, and they had this massive, perfect plan. I always seen people when I was trying to bring on new team members, they always come with this ideal world plan. Well, the world's not ideal. And they found out shortly after they landed in this book where they got a massive storm they didn't anticipate, and they didn't have the ability to survive it, so they aborted the mission almost immediately.
Yeah.
And that's when he gets left behind. So they left, and they left him behind. They thought he was dead, and he had very limited resources to survive because a lot of the things were destroyed. So that's where the whole thing starts, and it's about life or death. You know, and business is not necessarily life or death, but he had what he had to win, and he had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's where it all starts with being resourceful, starting with what you have. Because a lot of people in a perfect, ideal world have plenty of capital. They have plenty of technology. They have the ability to turn work around quickly. They know how to do everything needed to do the job. But the reality is, that's not always the case. Sometimes we don't have the resources. Sometimes we don't have the staff, the expertise, and you got to make it happen. You got to figure it out.
Yeah.
You got to be the solution to a lot of things. You got to wear a lot of hats, and he wore every single hat because he was a crew of one now.
Right.
And when you're in business early on, especially, or even if you're mature, you know, you never have the crew that you want, the dream team. So you got to figure things out. And I love that. The most of anything, how he took something that was available and he made it work for the problem he had in front of him.
Yeah. And what do you think, like, because he wore a ton of hats. He went outside of his area of expertise, but like he also let his strengths guide him, right? So like as a botanist, he doesn't have food, he doesn't have a lot of things, but he takes potatoes and knows, you know, exactly how to grow them and how to, you know, and that ultimately saved his life.
Right.
And so, like, part of being resourceful is taking the things that you do have, to your point, and like going all in on that, riding that. While you wear a lot of hats in sort of a mediocre, you know, you're doing what you can around you while driving what you're best at.
Right. The big problem he had is that it takes 2 years to get to Mars in this environment, so they can't just send another ship to get him. So he's got to stay alive for 2 years.
A long time.
You know,
yeah.
Let's say it was 2 years. I'm not sure the number, but he only had enough food for 60 days. You know, it was a 30-day mission, so they had enough food for 60 days for a bunch of people. He could stretch it out a little further, but he didn't have enough food, so he's going to die. And the potatoes were sent usually. Food, I guess he explains it quite simply, that food's sent in vacuum packs. You know, because it's very lightweight. They just add a little bit of water, and they had a machine that made water. But they sent real potatoes because the crew would be there for Thanksgiving. So the only thing he had that could possibly turn into additional food was the potato. But there's no bacteria on Mars. There's no soil on Mars. So he also figured out how to create fertilizer.
Right.
You know, he repurposed his own poop, right? So he made his own
pretty way to
fertilizer,
say that,
and he
yeah.
used fertilizer from the crew that was there.
Right.
So he figured it out, and he was able to make enough food on a couple different occasions to live a little longer. What I love most about this book is how he had a million problems. It seemed like problem after problem.
Impossible, right? Looking at it holistically.
Yeah, he had oxygen issues, he had water issues, but the biggest issue he always handled first. He prioritized the problem.
Right.
It's a very big misunderstood word is priority. About a few hundred years ago, if you look at the etymology of priority, it means the one. Like, there is no such thing as priorities. Priority is the one and only thing.
Right.
And he does that quite nicely. But now priorities means a lot of different things. But he was able to put first things first and focus on that problem, because if that one didn't work, nothing worked.
Yeah. And that's what's amazing, because on its face, right, you have a guy on a foreign planet alone at one point with no communication with Earth.
Right.
And it just seems it's too big. It's too big to conquer. And, you know, I've felt like that. And I know a lot of people feel like that. It's like the end goal is just too monumental. Mm-hmm. And in this book is a great walkthrough of, well, on day one, you don't need to leave Mars. What do you need to do? You need to figure out how to reproduce food.
Right.
Then you need to figure out how to, get in the little car, the rover, and travel a little bit and come back. And so, like, things expand a little bit. And as days go by, or souls, as he calls them on Mars, his world opens up. And it's little by little, what seemed insane, right, when he was left there for dead with the hole in his suit, it becomes tangible. And that's what I love, right?
Yep.
And we've dealt with that. We both deal with that. Same with Steve.
5-year, 10-year plans. I've seen them. They look great on paper, and they seem to make sense. But we don't live in years at a time. We don't live in weeks at a time.
Right.
5-week plan, 10-week plan, 90-day plan. We live daily, hourly. So it's not a. I used to say for financial planning, to speak to a massive problem is. You make assumptions in financial planning that you're going to have a certain amount of money, your expenses are going to be very predictable, and you're going to get certain rates of return, and the government's going to run the business of a government to have a predictable amount of inflation.
Right.
And you look at it, and you're either going to retire on time and have a happy life or not. Well, the life isn't ideal. It's not a 20-year plan. Okay, it's 20 perfect 1-year plans. It's not a 1-year plan. It's 365 perfect 1-day plans. And he, in this book, he goes to look at the problem and breaks it all the way down to. First of all, he identifies the problem. Then he kind of goes into his little lab and does testing and scenarios and sees whether or not it works before he takes the risk of trying to solve the problem.
Yeah.
One at a time.
It's amazing, and the runners know that too. It's like, your 365 days metaphor. Well, it's like, how scary is it to think about running 26.2 miles? I mean, that's just, it's on its face. It's overwhelming. Anyone can run one step, right? Anyone can manage one day. And I love that he really hits that home. It's like, and he says it too, like over and over and over again. He's like, well, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to play out, but tomorrow, I know what I need to do.
Right. Yeah. He plans each day to the next day. It's quite interesting as you look at, if you ever could close your eyes for a second and say you're stranded on a planet, you can't communicate, you have certain abilities, you don't have other abilities.
Right.
So the things he didn't know how to do, he figured out and tested how to do. And the things he knew how to do, he leveraged to the maximum. But he always just started with the small win.
Yeah.
If I make enough food to last another month, I'll have another month to figure out how to make enough food to last longer.
Right.
He was never trying to solve the entire problem. Like in the metaphor of the domino, these big dominoes, knocking over the big domino, a little 2-inch domino can't knock over a 3-foot tall domino.
Right.
It can't, but it can knock over a 3-inch domino. And, to buy yourself some time in business, I remember a bunch of times we didn't have enough cash flow to figure out, how to pay next month's bills or rents early on. So we had to make enough money to live literally a week at a time sometimes. Borrowing and doing whatever it took to create revenue and cash flow. Reduce expenses or find money.
Being resourceful at his best, right?
Yeah.
Just like him, he's like, I don't have enough food. Well, what can I do? I can cut calories.
Yeah.
What can I do? I can figure out how to make it hotter so that my body, uses less energy to burn calories. Or,
right.
That's not what I meant to say. Burns less calories, cooling.
Right,
so,
right.
And so it ties into, and I have a question for you, right? It ties into like the next theme, which is he does it, NASA does it, everyone does it, where under pressure it's like, yes, we have to say yes, we have to agree to doing this, and now we know we have 30 days to figure it out. So it's like backfilling the promise, kind of like our boy Weintraub.
Right.
He says yes, and then he fills it out.
Oh, yeah.
So like in your experience, I always go back to this because it's such a transformational experience that not a lot of people go through, right? Where you almost died and then recreated yourself, recreated your business, and have been on this path, this ascent back up. And so was there a point there for you where it was like, sort of doing the unknown, like moving forward without knowing what it would look like?
Yeah. Wow.
That's a loaded question.
I didn't expect that question. what reminded me of it, I got a call for employment, reemployment opportunity today. I'm in the car with a friend, and the phone rings. I go, "Oh, that's this company. They're trying to hire me." It's like, it's nice to feel good because I went from being hero to zero. And the way you fall and you go down, and you're not by any means even on anyone's radar to even live, let alone be reemployed. So that was kind of interesting today, but
it's perfect timing for the question.
26 May. A doctor told me I was in liver failure. They told me I was going to, he later told me I was going to be dead within, I think he said 6 months.
Right.
And I had this big company, this complicated company to run, so I had to figure out a plan to have that run, so I didn't destroy my life's work. So I have someone run it, and we looked at a couple of bridges, and I ended up making a decision within a very short period of time. My life's work, 25 years, I decided in a relatively short period of time, I stabilized that situation, and then I had to survive. So now you got to look at how does someone labeled alcoholic get a liver transplant. So I did a little research. The average liver transplant waiting was 321 days at the time, and I only had 6 months. So I had to act quick. The next thing was I had to get in a transplant center. You got to get listed. So that was it. Everything was about getting listed. And to get listed, you got to do a number of things. You got to do relapse prevention. You got to go through a medical screening and everything else. And once that's done, you got to wait it out and get into the right area to get transplanted. So it was more helpful for me to be in the South. In fact,
And so you moved.
I moved, yeah. I literally moved to the southeastern United States, which at the time, the laws changed since, there was more organs in Southeast America than there was in Northeast America. If I stayed in Northeast, I'd probably be gone. And then, of course, Mayo Clinic keeps you alive long enough. They kept me alive a little longer, so the thing happened. A prisoner died, and everything happened, and they extract the organ, they harvest it in Alabama, put it in me in Jacksonville. I survive. 4 days later, I go into rejection. The new organ's rejecting. I don't know if I ever even told you that. So that was like the first piece of bad news after something really cool happened. So in this book, he has a win, and then within 2 seconds of the win, he gets another loss.
Something explodes in his face. Yeah.
And that's life. And I've had a few of those even since. Answer to the long question is, I never lost sight of what I wanted to do. I wanted to come back, recreate myself, reestablish myself, do something more purposeful and meaningful with my second chance. And that was the ultimate vision, but that's always been down to the day. What can I do today, to speak to one of our earlier books, what today can I do that makes whatever I have to do tomorrow either easier or unnecessary?
Yeah.
It was breaking it down one at a time, using whatever I had, because I didn't have unlimited resources.
Easier or unnecessary? I like that.
Yeah. So he did that. He figured out the very best probability of success.
Yeah.
And put it in play. And many cases, like I got lucky for sure. Easily could not be here. So the world the universe conspired, so to speak to the Alchemist, our first book. The universe conspired as well.
Right. Luck tends to come to people with a certain mindset.
Yeah.
You help your odds.
Yeah, you do.
But there were a lot of things to unpack that I think are important. Like you talked about not getting flustered or getting upset when things blew up. You know what I mean? Like kind of expecting it. Yeah. And then you realize it's life and you handle it. And you move on, not expecting things to be perfect or incredible. When they are, you're definitely thankful and you cherish those times, but it's almost like you look at them as the exception, right. And then the stuff that blows up in your face is sort of the rule. It's the standard. Things aren't perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a process psychologists called mental contrasting. And it's when you envision a goal, but you also envision probable obstacles and failures along the way.
Yeah.
People that do that and anticipate the problems do better statistically than people that just kind of will it into existence, like the law of attraction.
Right.
Statistically, if you believe that you really hit the goal. So he had to believe, I got to think, he had to believe that he was going to survive because he believed in himself.
Tons of self-belief.
Yeah, I mean, you know you can do it. And if you're out there looking to start a business, confidence in your own ability to persevere and the persistence to keep trying and testing things is so big.
And just taking everything in stride. Like it's I almost felt like I had an emotional attachment to that. Like the way, because I'm a lot better at it now, but I worked hard to get to that point where it's like things happen and you remove the emotion and because the first thing is always like, why me?
Yeah.
Why me? Or like, why is this happening? Or whose fault it? But when it's like, okay, it's life. And then you look around you and you handle it. And so he even has times where he freaks out and screams and gets angry. And then he comes back. He's like, okay, that felt good. Now time to handle what's around us. And I love that because when you expect issues or when you expect these things and it becomes par for the course, you become a lot better at handling it. You know,
Yeah.
It's a skill. It's something you truly build up and you work towards.
Yeah, I got a negative comment on one of my videos today.
Yeah?
And I was like,
Shouldn't even be looking at him. Shouldn't even be looking at him.
I remember when we first met, that was one of the hardest things you had to deal with, right?
It was a big block,
The
yeah.
criticism.
Yeah, right.
Particularly if you're putting yourself out there. And
Well, something that's so personal to you, too. You know what I mean? It's not like it's like your life.
Right.
So...
I mean, like, I don't think he, his life or death situation, I don't think he cared, but in something like, because I've seen you stretch yourself a little bit, in the last probably year more so than a lot of people.
For sure.
You were
Yeah.
settled in, comfortable. You started a lot of new ventures. And that, we did a live event. We're doing this. This show didn't exist, October.
That's brand new.
It didn't exist. Like nothing. It was an idea. Now it's a real thing. We have a real thing.
Yeah. For me, it was the business pivot, like the workshops we do and going into these corporations and just, it's a different world, you know what I mean? So that's been the biggest pivot.
One of my favorite Ed Pernaro stories is when, I'll tell you this, Steve, because you weren't there. We were doing a meeting for a group of executives in Tampa, and Eddie had his famous Boston Red Sox. He had the red sleeve shirt.
Right.
And he walked in there, and they're all looking to him like he's like they took him completely serious because of all the authority he had, in his life. Like it doesn't
That's
make
great.
a difference, because he was himself.
Right.
It was his brand. But they're all sitting around.
I'll never
suits,
forget that.
And Sue's looking at him, saying like, "What do we do?"
Like I was walking in with green skin or something was the way they looked at me at first. It was like, oh man.
Well, one of my buddies told me to go take you out and get you a
I
shirt.
was like, that guy, go dress that guy. It was good.
Remember when I didn't wear socks? I was wearing the high cut short, the pants.
That's a classy thing, though.
I know.
No
I was-
sux with
Loafers.
dress shoes.
Yeah, I was.
But you looked like you had little Pippi Longstockings. I don't know what the hell.
Oh, they were rolled
My
up
buddy
to the
was-
calves.
No.
I'm like normally in a suit, and I don't even have a tie anymore. But I'm trying to recreate my brand as well. I don't want to be seen as that. And you two roll in like you just got out of off a surfboard.
Hey, if you own it, right?
Yeah.
But the answer, it doesn't make a difference. And I don't know what the point being is, you be yourself, I guess. Be yourself. And if you know what you're doing and you position yourself with enough authority, you're good.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah. It was interesting. But where do we dive off? Oh, we were talking about like how you handle the adversity. And okay, here's a side note, because we always have fun when we do it. Like we take it seriously, but we don't.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things this guy, and I always, just for reference, right? Again, this is a dude alone on Mars. It was a very high probability of death. Okay? That makes your problems less serious. It's like someone got to the moon, right? That means building a business is not that monumental.
Right.
But anyway, so he's on Mars facing death every single day, can't breathe. The planet's essentially trying to kill him, and he's joking and he's having fun and like just taking things in stride. And it makes me think like, oh my God, I gotta send this email out. It's an email. Who cares?
Right.
Relax.
Or a post.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's Instagram.
Don't take yourself too seriously.
Can't.
He had a good time.
Yeah.
Like he was having a good
Seems
time with
like it,
himself.
yeah.
Like he was entertaining himself. He's there like over a year by himself. Have you ever been in jail?
I haven't.
You have not?
I got PC'd in high school.
Oh, you did?
That's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I did too. And this was college, and I got stuck there for like I think it was there over a day. And I'll never forget it because
Felt lonely.
Well, I wasn't lonely because I had a real criminal with me. And he snuck.
Oh, a real
No, he was a real criminal. Like he was there. He was just, he knew everything about it. Like, you know. But one thing, we were there a long time. He goes, "You want to play a game?" I go, "Yeah." We were there for hours, and he had a nickel somehow, and he said, "This is a game we play in jail." And they throw it against the wall. They throw it. You got to hit the wall, and then you get a point for who lands closer to the wall with hitting the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've played that with marbles.
Yeah, it was in jail, and this was what my point being is, the environment had 4 walls. I remember it was 4 walls, a toilet, and a bed. And we were sitting on the ground against one of the walls, and we played that game for a couple hours and had a blast. We laughed.
Yeah.
We occupied time. And he does this because he has a lot of, because you can't work the whole time because of the oxygen on Mars. I mean, I've not been there lately, but my understanding is you can't work. That was the story, that you have to get rest. And when he got rest, he figured out ways to entertain himself. He had a good time.
By the way, you can use Mars as a geotag on Instagram.
Mars?
I used Mars to geotag something.
What's that mean?
Like, you know how we put Hollywood Beach a lot
Yeah.
for our location? You can put Mars. Mars, planet.
That'd be good for the stalkers that are out there.
Yeah, well, we're on
You
Mars.
probably got more stalkers than anyone.
I guess.
You got that chiseled body that I keep seeing on your little Instagram account.
I'll hide it, I guess. No.
We find it mean anything you're airbrushing.
Well, I'm not yet. It's gonna be hard. We're gonna have to get the reverse
You know, we got to do
filter.
with you, put you in jail for the weekend.
We're gonna have to do the reverse filter app. We gotta come up with that.
whatever.
What's that?
Take all the
What's the
ripples
reverse filter?
out of his abs.
Oh, make you chunky?
No, so we can see if it's filtered or not.
Oh yeah, I wanted to. This is an idea. Like all these filters people look different than I know they really do. I was going to create an app. This is a freebie for someone who's a scientist or whatever that removes the filter from these pictures. So it brings someone back to the real picture.
Level playing fields.
Yeah. Like, I don't.
It's a multi-million-dollar
use
idea.
any filters. You know, I can't take the scars out and the chins, whatever.
Oh, my God.
I'm good though. But he had fun. I think they call it irreverence, right? Because he also had fun with. He was after a while. Of course, he's in basically the military, right? You got to follow orders. Like NASA tells you to do something, so he started playing with them too. He made a game out of that too.
He had a blast with them, yeah, like throwing stuff back and forth.
Talk about Mindy.
Yeah.
The character Mindy, I love her.
So she plays a role. I mean, she has one point specifically that I'm pretty sure you're alluding to. But so she is the one that she works for NASA. She's kind of a low tier employee as far as their hierarchy goes, and she's monitoring the planet. And they think he's dead, and she notices, wait a minute, some things up there, by all the material, machinery, and stuff that they left, it's moved a little bit. And she kind of puts together like he survived and he's using these pieces but there's a delay system. So things that happen on Mars that are seen on the satellites, it takes like 17 minutes to get back to Mindy so that she can see. And so when they figure out communication and they're talking to Mark Watney, the astronaut on Mars, there's a 17-minute delay. Right. And so someone in a higher up, I don't remember if he was the head of NASA or some department, but it's another situation where he goes, Mindy, I need that. It can't be a 17-minute lag. I need it to be 4 minutes. And she goes, okay. And has no idea, again, same concept, no idea how she's going to do it, but backfill, like Richard Branson. He says, say yes and figure out how later.
Right.
And that's an important theme throughout the book, important theme for entrepreneurs. Like, you don't always have the answers.
Yeah, like how does Jeff Bezos get a case of water? I ordered it yesterday. I get a case of water the other day. In the same day. I know it didn't go on an airplane. he figured it out, right?
Right.
So they have these. You can literally figure out anything, but I mean, to the point with Mindy, I'm just amazed that the water came through the mail on Amazon for basically the same price at a grocery store.
We were staring at it for like.
I don't understand it. I was like, how is it possible? But they made it possible. Obviously, they figured it out. But Mindy, that character, Mindy makes with no Mindy, he dies.
Right.
Right? Because she's aware, and she's actually looking for his dead body because they're scanning the planet to see where he ended up, and they never found him. But she was aware enough to know something moved, and he had to have moved it. And then they activate this communication, because one of the ideas with that communication, to talk to onto your point, is they only had a little bit of time to communicate. So he had to do it in very short bursts. I forget how they communicated. They communicated with one-lines or something.
It sort of improved. They improved over time, but at the very beginning is what you're talking about.
Yeah, he could always say, like, "I'm alive. Please tell me what to do."
Right.
Yeah, and they started with very limited communications, but got tons of interactions. They figured it out how to communicate.
Yeah.
And how to make that happen as a team.
That was really cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And speak to teamwork. When you're assembling your team, sometimes you gotta train people. Which means you gotta bring people on and teach them things, and sometimes you gotta acquire talent. And not the easiest thing in the world to do is put a good team together. But if you look at all the moving parts in NASA that they had to bring him home. By the way, good thing they liked him.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the book, I think there's a point there. It's like, make sure you're well liked in life, because if you're stuck somewhere, and let's pretend you're not even stuck in Mars. Let's pretend you're stuck in like Africa. You got hurt in a safari. Does your company like you enough to send a medevac team to go
jerk.
get you?
Leave them there.
Yeah, or insurgents capture you. Or are they going to come get you?
Right.
But it's all about, they wanted him home, and he became popular, and he had a little message that he shared, and they conspired and spent hundreds of millions of dollars to bring him home.
You said this the other day, and I laughed at the time, but I mean, it's 100% true. You're like, you gain nothing from being a jerk.
There's all that negative
upside.
optionality at its best. Like
Right.
The downside of being an a-hole is immense.
Right.
Most times you don't have to be one, and so many people are for some reason. I don't know why.
It's amazing. Like particularly, navigating through, some of these conversations we're having in the business world. It's like, if you were just a little bit more decent, so many doors would open up. Mm-hmm. That's my thought process so many times. But I don't know. I guess that Steve Jobs biography kind of painted a picture for people where they feel like they can act a certain way.
Well, he's one of the only example in the world where it ever worked.
Right.
And the people that worked with him loved him.
Right.
They knew he was.
Well, respected him.
Yeah.
They respected him.
They knew who he was.
Right.
They understood him. I guess that might be it too. Respected and understood that this guy's going to lead us. There's lots of ways to get a result.
Right.
Of course, Mark Watney was very well liked in the book, because the crew wanted to come back and get him. If they didn't like him, you think they all would have. It was a voluntary.
Right. That's the reason they put him on with the group. Partially is because he was so well liked, and his humor, and it helped camaraderie.
Yeah. Team building is about that. To my point, assembling a team is very, very specialized. You got to be super aware of the dynamic of teams that you put together, personalities,
Right.
How they complete one another. But you ever playing a really good team over the years?
Oh yeah.
You did rowing. That's a very
This one right here. Yeah, rowing.
Yeah, this is a great team. This is a very small team, but you couldn't meet three different people in the world that are conspiring to share a message.
But we were lacking someone with 6-pack well-defined abs.
Yeah.
And so
jumps like a Mexican jumping bean.
Well, anyway, actually, I do have a
On that
question.
note.
I'm switching it up, but I have a text that's actually on teamwork, sort of. So I wanted to throw it at you guys. But first, if you guys have a question, this podcast gave you any questions, feel free to text in at 754-273-6069. Leave a text, leave a voicemail, but this one was right on what you guys were saying. So it says, it seems he persevered to go it alone since he had to and was stuck on the planet. How do you know when you need a team or when you need to take on these tasks by yourself in your own business?
Well, I mean, I can speak from my personal journey. It's like a team. You don't realize. So I thought for a while, I like to have control over so much of what I do, and I thought for a long time, I want to keep doing this myself because it gives me that creativity, and I realized how naive that was, because once a team was established for the content that I'm creating, and you get people on the same page with how you like things edited, and you scale so fast.
Right.
So it's almost like as soon as you have the resources to make that step, I would advocate, and I'm thinking you'll agree with me, that the sooner you can put a team in place, the better, because the possibilities just increase exponentially.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a couple forces of nature working against you when it comes to trying to be everything to everybody. The first one is excessive self-regard. We think we're better at something than we really are.
Right.
You can't be the best in the world at everything. There are very few people that really were. In sports, there was so few Triple Crown winners, in horse racing. There was so few, and that horse has to win 3 different races to win the Triple Crown. And then the Triple Crown of baseball was RBIs, batting average, and home runs, I think, right? Very few people did that. And in basketball, it's the same thing. If you're a leader and you want to do everything, you may as well be a solopreneur. Because what happens when you do someone else's job, that's something they do every single day, and I was always adequate at certain things. I could get away with it. In fact, some people wouldn't even know I wasn't as good as the person that I stepped in front of, and I did it a lot. You piss people off.
Right.
First of all, you piss people off and you don't let them do their job. And it's bad leadership because you rob the organization of what your best, highest use is, which is usually whatever it is you've designed. Your best player is always you, but your best player can't play all the positions. So if you're building a team, you want to grow rich in your niche, and have the wisdom to recognize the cognitive biases at play. It's excessive self-regard, thinking you're better than you really are, confirmation bias. Those are all a big part of assembling a team.
It allows you to think about. I went through that exact same thing. It allows you to think about what you're truly good at, what your strengths truly are, and minimizing or handing off the other things allows you to become exceptional at your one thing.
Right.
Gary Keller, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge part. The time you get back. Well, it's not even like you're disregarding the other things. You're actually putting people in those places that are boosting the other things. So you can see, obviously, the exponential curve there just by painting that picture.
There's a big mistake you could make in your life. You could end up, going through the way of the world is to make money to survive, right? That's a need. Happiness isn't possible without survival, and the way that people want to do that is they go out and they get an expertise or a trade that they can trade with the world. That's what trade is, something you can trade for resources. And a lot of times that shows up as a job, and then someone wants to be, so you're an employee of someone else's, and then you go on to be, perhaps you want to go out on your own, you become self-employed. That means you become your own employee. And a lot of people that are self-employed think they have a business, and it's not a business. Okay, and this is where teamwork comes in. Like in my early days knocking on doors, they gave me a book with a pencil and a calculator where we could calculate the premiums, and we'd knock on doors and see if anybody wanted to buy insurance. And if they said yes, we'd pull out the calculator and we'd write the application. We'd drag it back to the office and then hand it in and wait for it to get paid, and I get paid.
Yeah.
But while I was doing everything else, no new sales were happening. Years later, I ended up having hundreds of people out there because I built systems to train them to bring clients in and to process business all at once. And you start with 1, you go from 0 to 1, so you get proof of concept with your idea. So let's pretend, we have M3. our new product. How to, what's your message, how to build your message, how to, decide what model you're gonna build, how you're gonna monetize your message, and the media, how you're gonna spread the word. That's an M3 product. It all started with just one idea. We didn't start with massive messages. It's just this message really. Here's how we share our voice and we build a business around it.
Exactly.
That's kind of it.
Got another question for you. Question is, Mark talks about loneliness in the movie, and it reminded me success can be lonely road in entrepreneurship. How do you know if your business you're creating will be worth it?
I mean, you don't. You don't. I mean, it's self-belief, and success is lonely because it requires a certain amount of dedication and commitment. That means you're going to lack in other areas. It's impossible to give 14 hours a day to something you truly believe in that doesn't exist yet while you're having an amazing social life.
Yeah.
Right. The two just, in that people talk about trials and tribulations all the time. Building this business for me, this year's been a lot better because things are picking up at almost an extent where I feel like I've been waiting for this to happen. And it's fun because you're seeing things pay off. But as little as a year to 2 years ago, I was having, a lot of trouble with the social side of things. Like, I've just sacrificed so much to be able to put all of my day, all of my time, all of myself into something that you feel it. You pay for it at a certain level. And so, to answer the question, it's sacrifice. And if your goal is to have an amazing time and, the best social life you've ever imagined, don't be an entrepreneur because it's a different road, and it's a different road for a reason, Well,
there are two things that come to mind. The first thing was is it Demonstrates from last week's book, the guy that shaved half of his head until he buried himself he shaved half of his head so that he could practice. He couldn't go out in public till he got it right.
Shamed himself.
He shamed himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took time. And this is a lonely road, but it's worth it, right?
Yes.
It's the price you pay to turn the key on your own business and that lifestyle that we're selling so heavily, to have your lifestyle be the center of your life, and business revolves around it.
Right.
You build your business around your lifestyle. The second idea is the concept, and I've had a difficult time confirming this, that the Chinese bamboo tree grows underneath the ground for 5 years. It takes the roots 5 years. They fertilize it for 5 years, and it grows all by itself underneath the ground. And in 8 weeks, it sprouts up 80 feet.
Yep.
That's entrepreneurship. Like, that's what happens. It takes time and patience and strategy and failures and celebrating and crying to get the result that you want to get.
All there.
Be like the Chinese bamboo tree.
It means you got to eat your pride.
Yep.
It means you got to be okay not knowing. Yeah.
You suck it up.
The bamboo thing is perfect.
Yeah.
That's a great metaphor.
And then I heard someone say that bamboo is not a tree.
Oh, they can.
Yeah, it's not an angry person screwing up an awesome story.
Imagine taking time out of your day to comment bamboo is actually not a tree. Just imagine.
That's that guy that the spaceship wouldn't turn around for because he's an
exactly. Have fun on Mars.
He's an a-hole. So if you're that person, stop doing that. Stop.
You guys want to take a voicemail?
Yeah, we got any?
Yeah, we got one. We got a couple, actually.
Cool. Oh, we got to take.
Yeah, you go grab your headphones.
This is my favorite part. I look like
We have a
Mark
couple.
Watney.
We have a couple voicemails, but we have a few more texts as well.
Hey, Steve,
Let's do some voicemails.
Are you an underwear model like that Marky Mark guy?
Not yet.
Don't you have like that going on?
I mean, working on it.
Just kidding.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Hey guys, John here. Love the podcast. Love all the messaging. I actually read The Martian. And it's a great book. I loved it. But I was wondering if you guys could elaborate on how it coordinates the business. Thanks. Keep up the good work.
So kind of touched on that a lot, but maybe if there's like a couple 3 points or something like that, because that's one of the texts, 3 points that could touch on business. Another question was that.
The great news is we can say, just listen to the podcast. my
Three big takeaways.
three
maybe?
big ones. Yeah. What do you think? I think resourcefulness is definitely one of the bigger ones.
Anticipating problems. Like,
Yep.
don't let the failure of one thing deter your journey. You're gonna have setbacks. And
Anticipate.
if you want them, like there's something called a mistake learner's high. People that really are in their zone in flow, they like a mistake. Like Edison, when he was
the fire.
eliminating the hay in the haystack, looking for the needle, he'd eliminate one. He'd actually get a charge out of that. He liked it.
Yeah.
That's the take on Edison. I just watched his other movie. He loves being thorough. It'll happen. That's one.
The house burning down is too good to not talk about. When his workshop was on fire and people, like, everything he'd worked on was inside, and he ran up and everyone's crowded around. He comes up and he looks at it and people expect him to have a breakdown, and he goes, was it his wife? He goes,
It's
get the
his son,
kids
yeah.
and they got to see this. They'll never see a fire like this again because it's a lost cause. It's done. So just embrace it.
Yeah. When you see a disaster, like, be the only one in there not freaking out, because when you freak out, you're dealing with two problems. You're dealing with the problem and the freaking out.
Right.
Yeah.
You're
So,
creating more hell.
Yeah.
Hey, something you mentioned in one of your last answers that we didn't talk about during this is he put systems in place to succeed. Like with waking up and with growing the potatoes and making sure that he's got enough oxygen, and he sort of jimmy rigs all these things, but he puts systems in place that ensure his success.
Right. It's survival and success, right?
Right. But businesses operate with systems, successful ones.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs put systems in place to succeed. Your insurance agency blew up when you put effective systems in place that got more to more people.
Yep.
So that's cool. That's an important one.
Algorithms. I mean, obviously, you brought this out quicker, but I would have brought it up too. Is working on one thing at a time.
Steps. Yeah.
You can't. Multitasking doesn't exist. You can only really work on one thing at a time. You can have things pegged out, but what's that one thing? Knock it over, and those three things will. If you never listen to another business podcast or read a business book, if you think about those three things: being resourceful, one thing at a time, and anticipating failure, you're in a good place.
Agreed.
Hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you kind of answered the next question. I have two, but it talks about. I'll read it to you. So it says. While it highlights the key is to adapt and react positively, seeing these uncontrollable issues as a means to a new path versus roadblocks. How do you recommend balancing this acceptance with staying confident and energized while working towards the goal? How does one go from letting the idea of the uncontrollable terrorize them to letting it excite them? It's kind of like a mindset shift, which is pretty cool.
It's the obstacle is the way. You want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, you turn in. We used to get it with phone calls when you'd call them during dinner and they'd say all kinds of nice things to you, like you're interrupting their dinner to tell them life insurance.
Oh, I can imagine.
And the salesman's creed is every no is one step closer to a yes. But we actually had a system in place. We built a system to reward something for good behavior because the money didn't show up at the same time. And this is what just talk to the bamboo. As you're fertilizing the bamboo plant is pollinating and festering, getting ready to go. There's no evidence that the thing's going to happen. So we used to assign a point to getting a no. We used to assign a point to knocking on a door and someone telling you to leave. So at the end of the week, we would compare points instead of money. Like, I got 50 points.
Right.
And we knew if you got 50 points and they were real, you're going to make money at some point. You just didn't get paid yet. So you got to have a reward system to make yourself feel good about something that didn't happen yet, that the good strategy will produce a result.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, delayed gratification. I think it's instant gratification versus delayed.
I feel like I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would echo that. I mean, everything that went wrong, anything that goes wrong, so quote unquote goes wrong, it's only negative when you insert the negativity. So like, for YouTube creators, for example, that's a big part of my world. You spend a lot of time, energy, you put out a video, you think it's going to change the world. No one cares, okay? You could say, well, something went wrong. Or you can say, all right, now I know what doesn't work. I'm better at creating video. I understand things that I didn't, right? It's like every failure has a lesson, and I know that's cliche, right? Every failure teaches you something, but all those little lessons, when you stack them up, that's what differentiates a Bezos from someone that never had the courage to make those mistakes.
Right.
And so you need them. And so when you look at it as like, yes, this is getting me to that exceptional status, or it's getting me to greatness faster, there's really no other way to look at it but positively, you know?
Right.
So that's my answer. You have one more voicemail, or is that it?
We have another voicemail, but it's very similar. It has the same question about how does this book pertain to business.
Okay.
And the other voicemails are just from the other podcast, but
I'll add to what because we talk about, putting something out there that someone doesn't like.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen you put out like amazing artistic messaging that is fantastic. One does it badly, while the next one that's more simplified and easy for you to do, it does really well.
Right.
And you got to go to school on what works. What works. And in my Instagram account, if you went to it and looked through it, there's some blue kind of things that stick out, and they're less than artistic, as Eddie would so clearly tell me. That's not my wheelhouse. I literally did it on my phone probably 2 minutes after you taught me. So I taught myself how to make a post look different. And all of a sudden, I got one out of nowhere. They got like 25,000 views in video, which is a little harder to get an interaction with. And the only difference was it was still me, but the beginning of it was a blue picture. I think I had a picture of George Bush on there if you want to look for it. And that one got like 20. It was about recreating yourself. I heard him tell me a story about recreating yourself, recreating to recreate. He goes away every year and recreates to recreate himself. And I've been using that for a long, long time. So that was the beginning of the video about, hey, take some time off, get away, which is secondary to the message that this was different and the data says it works. And I've done more since, and it does work.
Right.
But it doesn't work every time. I don't know if it's the novelty. I don't really know for sure, but it's an ongoing experiment. Everything's an ongoing experiment in awareness, to speak to Mindy's point in the book. If you're aware of new ideas coming into your life and you're ready to accept them and also accept the failures, you'll be in a way better place to use that knowledge, weaponize that knowledge, so to speak.
And the more you post, the more data you get around
Right.
when and what types of posts and what kinds, and even down to color format,
Yeah.
all that stuff makes a big
Audience
difference.
specific. I mean, your audience may not have responded to that blue, different post. Who knows? It is what it is. The experiment. If you talk about a scientist, they control the area and they test, and everything's about testing.
Imagine Mark Watney not like putting solar panels on the top of the rover, realizing it works, and then not doing it.
Right.
Like that's essentially what I was doing with my YouTube channel for years. Just being like stubborn with that approach. And it's like, look, dude, the data's in front of you. Do this. Like, here's the blueprint. If you want it, it's there. And eventually I was like, fine. And now, the past 2 weeks, I've got like 6,000 subs on my YouTube channel. Like, it's trending up, and it's not mystery. It's nothing crazy. It's like, you looked at the data.
Yeah, bamboo tree.
Bamboo tree. Yeah,
How many years were you underground? 4 or 5 years. You're shooting up now. Seriously.
Yeah.
I got a question. Do you think he wrote this book with that story and all the trials and tribulations in mind, and Mars was kind of the placeholder, or he wanted to tell a story about Mars and it just happened to have all these different entrepreneurial type of roadblocks?
Well, I did a little bit of research on him, and I know he's a science fiction writer, and I know he spent a long time just studying the science behind this so he could have a real accurate portrayal. So I'm not sure. I think it might have just been a story about trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
And, that's my guess. And they're so relatable to the entrepreneurial journey that it's just, to me, it's just blinking red.
Yeah.
Like it has to be talked about. But I don't know. There's got to be interviews or something we can check out.
Well, they had the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks. Very similar movie. Right? He's stuck, and he starts making things out of what he had available.
Right.
And he ultimately makes the raft out of what was he? He was stripping something.
Oh,
but
that's so long ago, I don't
same movie though. It was basically in a place where you're alone. Odds are stacked against you. You got tons of setbacks, The quintessential hero's journey.
He's just a dumbed down Mark Watney.
Or Marky Mark. You guys are probably too young to know what that means.
Marky Mark?
Mark Wahlberg
The
was
rapper.
he was an underwear model. And I was.
I'm from Boston, man. I know.
You didn't know that? Yeah, he used to Calvin Klein.
Let's see here.
So we have handpicked the next 4 books, and Eddie's going to go through them all and a little bit about why.
Awesome. And side note, Steve is going to do an awesome job of putting the calendar together for the month and putting it in the private Facebook group. So that'll be there pinned to the top for you to check out. So next week we're going to do Extreme Ownership. One of the best books I've ever read. I didn't think it would be, and then I read it and I was just blown away. Great read. Talks about military, their lessons, how that translates to the corporate world, and just incredible for leadership.
I've not read that book yet.
It's you're gonna love it.
And it's not because it wasn't recommended. I just haven't read it yet. This book, Tools, Brian Johnson recommended this. The guy who I respect, and this is a book I know very little about, but it was his #1 book, and this guy's read and curated like 500 books. It's about being resourceful and using tools to overcome, right?
Absolutely. I haven't read this one, so I'm pumped to read that. Can't Hurt Me, another special operations themed book. I think that's coincidence, but definitely a good read.
Those guys are like astronauts, these Navy SEALs.
Oh my God,
I mean, they're all
problem
systems
solving.
people. Yeah, problem solving systems. They put them in a lot of problem. They put them in a lot of peril.
And lastly, Ray Dalio, Principles.
Oh,
Everyone references this book.
It's about algorithms. Like
Testimonies from Bill Gates, Tony Robbins, big players.
totally awesome book.
So cool. So we're pumped and can't wait to do Extreme Ownership next week. Steve, any messages regarding the number one more time? Or
Sure. So if you want to leave a text or a voicemail, 754-273-6069. Shoot any questions you have about any 4 of those books. We'll get to them. And that's it.
cool.
All right.
Next week we'll introduce the mic winner as well. Boom.